Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and challengers, fans across NA, across the world. Welcome to the stream. We're diving into week 2, day 1. I'm Cubby. I'm going to be your flex today. Joining me, going to be Deserex on the play-by-play, and also Joshi as well. Deserex, how you doing, man? Able to catch any of the LCS action week 1?
You know what? I was a little bit busy on content. We had a little bit of a rush onto that one. No, but you know what? I did catch up with the fashion trends that you've been setting for us. I now have Dad Bod by Cubby currently worn. As you can see, the sweater. The collar coming out of the sweater is very, very important.
We all feel as though this is like our Macklemore era, right? We all got to get in our grandpa's clothes, hit up the thrift shop, and make sure that we're looking ready just to make sure we can follow your footsteps.
You know, I'd really thought that when I ran the desk, I wouldn't get ganged up on, but as someone that's usually in your guys' shoes, I honestly expected nothing less, and I respect it. That being said, we have some business to cover on this stream before we get into our games today. Starting off with what happened week 1 in Challengers, as with the new format, it's fast and furious, gentlemen. Every team playing every day, 3 days a week, and here's what where things shook out after week 1. Deserex, your thoughts? What do you see?
I don't think expectations are exactly shattered yet, but there are a few cracks coming out early on. I know we expected the top 3 picture to have FlyQuest up there, but not too far off having Evil Geniuses in that as well. Cincinnati Fear off to a rough start. It's making me question how much of an impact Trevor actually did have in that squad. And then there's Maryville University, the one where they kind of got slaughtered in week number 1. Their strength of schedule is better this time around, so it's time to start turning that truck around.
Yeah. I'm not too upset about the fact that FlyQuest is not currently in our top 3. They did play both the 1 and the 2 right off the bat, and so the fact that they dropped 0-2 to Team Liquid, hurting them in the standings right now, but they got plenty of time to catch up.
Yeah, also shout out to Supernova for me. The 3-3 from them was quite the surprise. I don't think they had the strongest strength of schedule in that first week, but still some good moments out of them. And that actually somewhat segues us into our next segment. We went to Twitter and asked you on the @PathToLCS Twitter what our best plays of the week were. So we had 4 plays that you guys got to vote on, and we're going to show you the top 2 here as our first play of the week that garnered votes, at least on Twitter, that made it to the stream. It's going to be Supernova's top laner, Quacker, who hit 3 men with the Q of
Lens doesn't have flash. Can Supernova get on top of the carry or just get into the pit and go for the steal? Music does not get in there. It's secured for wildcard. Now Duo King is deep in enemy territory, trying to be that front line. Big engage from Quacker, but Lens is relatively untouched. It's still doing damage. Supernova though, they got 2 to start things off. Lens can't get the damage down. Music is on him. Supernova are winning the fight. That's an ace.
And Scanty just keeps the
He just keeps what? He just keeps what? Beat down.
Just keeps winning. Just keeps winning.
Quite the play coming out of Quacker. But, you know, we went to Twitter to garner our top 2 plays for the week, not just our top 1. So we have a second one for you. And guys, I mean, pretty appropriate that our second one comes from our most valuable prospect in spring. It's no one else but Mir on the Graves, who went massive in his Graves game last week.
As the Umbro Glaive completed. Going for a very aggressive lethality build. Another Emperor's Divide onto APA.
Oh, look this here.
Ultimate. Now the follow-up from Yuji trying to lock down this Nautilus, but he's very tanky. Maybe Winston will be enough to turn the play. It's traded. Mid laner for jungler, but Mir is a monster! Double kill on the Graves, chasing onto Winsome with no summoner spells, and that is a triple kill to Team Liquid's jungler.
I mean, that Graves, I think that APA, I talked to him afterwards, and he was like, yeah, he went like Season 6 jungle mode that game. He did over 30k damage on the Graves. Quite impressive. And Joshi, I know that you were quite impressed by TL's week 1.
Yeah, I mean, they had a fantastic start playing against a bunch of very difficult teams. The only game they dropped so far having been to Disguise, who a lot of people already had in the top 2, top 3. But I gotta say, at this point, Matt, that I feel like Steve is doing Beatdown dirty, right? He's making sure to clip it right as Beatdown is like getting into the meat of his point. Like, just don't keep him in the clip at that point, Steve. There's already something weird going on here.
You know,
I like that.
I got to show a little bit bias onto this one. I was very excited by Quacker's play, but because I always get hyped up when we see these newer players making plays like that, because in this league, it's not about how good you are, but how good you can get later on and how much growth you can have. Quacker, Robbie Bob, even Onat to some extent, you know, we're seeing them attempt plays rather than sit by the sidelines, so it always gets me hyped to that aspect.
Yeah, also, speaking of sitting by the sidelines, you guys don't have to do that in Twitch chat, as you can actually vote on what our #1 play of the week was from week 1. We will be using this play to compare that to the best play that we have in week 2, and so on throughout the split. So let your voices be heard, and vote for Mir or Quacker in Twitch chat, as well as, I mean, there are some other ways this split that you can have your voices heard, as we have a brand new feature on each of our channels this split. That is a sub button. No one better to describe this than the person that's actually sitting to my left, Deserex. We have some thoughts on how you can sub and support challengers.
Yeah, I do. In fact, me and Kangas, we came together to make a video for it. I'm already getting the energy up, if that's the actual video. But let's throw it over to that. Why don't we, Cubby?
Has this ever happened to you? What about this? As gamers, these sorts of things happen all the time, which is why we made LCS Challengers League emotes. Impress your friends. Stop sucking. Make better choices.
Since subscribing to LCS_Challengers, my confidence has never been higher.
And with 3 easy clicks, yours can too! Plus, you'll be directly supporting the players in the league.
So what are you waiting for? Come join us!
I have to really credit Kangas for his method acting, running around in a playground by himself. But I'm glad that he has some friends in the post-edit, That's kind of nice. It's a new thing for Kangas.
True, having friends, he's always struggled with that, so I'm really glad that he's had a couple people. And Eric, you seem to have found something particularly special about that, considering you're going to be his roommate.
Yeah. If you guys haven't heard, I'm going to be moving into the Castor Cabana with Mazel and Kangas, so the memes are only going to exponentiate here in Challengers League once we got a content house going on.
Wow, all right. Well, hey, congrats, but I think that we have to move on to some other things, as we've got some good matches actually coming up today on each of our streams. Quick
Mir.
update. Mir wins play of the week. All right, triple kill for the Graves. So Mir, at least on our stream, that will be moving forward to see what plays can topple that throughout the split as our most valuable prospect from spring, getting off to a hot start here in summer. But guys, we have to get off to a hotter start here for week 2, as we're starting off with quite a match on twitch.tv/PathToLCS. We've got Evil Geniuses Challengers going up against Disguise, followed up by Team Fish Taco versus Wildcard and Deserux. I know that we have a lot of questions that we have week 2 that we want to be answered by some of these teams. A lot of them starting actually with EG. But first off, I do want to hit on the Disguise lineup, as it was a rather good week 1 from Toast and Friends.
You know what? I am excited about that matchup. I am a little bit more excited about the TFT wildcard one, just because I feel like 5th and below is just chaos right now. The top 4 I feel like are a little bit more established. Evil Geniuses and Disguised, I think they're going to stay around that area, especially with some of the debates we're going to have later. I think we'll talk about that a little bit more. But Disguised, not too much to really say about them, other than like you got 3 champions. It's another day in the office when you're looking to rack and wins.
I mean, ultimately, I think we have a lot of good games in this second week coming through, right? Because we got to see a lot of our really top end just really bashing heads against each other in the first week. And that means that we aren't going to be seeing them again for a couple more weeks, right? But the one thing that is really nice about this split is the fact that we are doing a double round robin. We're going to be getting rematches between all the top teams and seeing how they react to all the different things that have happened, different patch changes, and even just reacting to the fact that they have played against these players before, because we didn't have that in spring, but we have it again.
Yeah, I know that someone who has worked with players and coached a bit, having a rematch can be some really good learnings as well for players. If you fall or win, revisiting some of those challenges can help a team improve. But one team that did look good in their first week, it was Disguised, as Joshi, a 4-2 start, going up against some of the strongest teams in the league in TLC and FlyC. We were pretty impressed with them week 1.
Yeah, I mean, trading games with both of them and then getting a 2-0 over Team Fish Taco as well. They've been looking quite strong, and it's not a big surprise, right? We have all of these players who were on star-studded lineups going in spring, now coming together to try and create their own super team down here in the Challengers League. And if you're taking down all these top teams already, I can only imagine what will happen when they have more time to play together.
And I know that at least with Young and Meech coming in, seeing them develop is definitely something we're going to be keeping our eyes on, as they are two of the younger players on that roster. But another team that we're still trying to figure out where they are in the standings or where they might be, it's going to be Evil Geniuses Challengers, as Deserox. A 4-2 start for them puts them tied for second with Disguised after week 1, but this could be quite the challenge for them today.
Yeah, I mean, even with the 4-2 start that we had from them, it wasn't exactly the Evil Geniuses that we were promised, right? Even in some of the matches where they were getting the exact draft that they wanted, right? Like Nico, Zeri, Yumi, all in round 1 against Wildcard, they would still end up losing that match. It does feel like there's some inner turmoil that needs to be ironed out before we can see the squad actually start to fire at the level that was promised.
Yeah, I think it's also worth noting that the 4-2 that they picked up was not against the strongest teams in the league. Like, not to say that any of the teams were really struggling, but we were expecting that Maryville was going to have a rough early start. They weren't playing on the same patch. They hadn't necessarily had opportunities to play against a lot of these different players. And Evil Geniuses, while they did win it, they looked a bit shakier than I think we were expecting.
Yeah, and I think a fun tidbit for this, after one of the Disguised wins last week, before we actually interviewed Zazel for the formal interview, he actually called out EGC as a bit of a dark horse, a team that I think he thought that people were not putting enough respect on. He has worked with King, Shade in the past as they went through C9. He has a lot of respect for them, and so I'm interested to see if EG could be the challenge that might have been promised today. We have some more discussion, especially about EG and really where they fall as we finally have the roster that we were promised. But it might be time for a little bit of embrace debate here on the stream, as we're going to be raising up EG. And honestly, you know, I'm a marketing major. I always like my Goldilocks pitches. So that is, you know, too hot. Like, if you want to throw me the boat, I'll take care of everything. I can do that. Too cold, you're going to give me no money. You know, the Esports Classic, I'll see what I can do. And then somewhere in the middle. So I think that we're going to start off, you know, on a bright spot, a positive spot, as EG have given us some good looks in that 4-2 from week 1.
Yeah, and I do believe that this team can develop into a top squad over the course of the season. A lot of the individual talent they have is absolutely spectacular. Look at Ryoma. Always been in the top of the tier 2 conversation when it comes to mid laners. Take it back to Summer 21, Proving Grounds, won the title back then. And with that, he was top 3 in KDA, first in kills, first in assists, first in damage, in a time where we had Harry and JoJo in the pool as well. Shaden's undeniable talent. EGF put a lot of emphasis on this kid. When he's firing on all cylinders, you get exactly what you got last spring, where he went 5 games with double-digit kills. Then there's King, the most winningest OPL player in history, also an Academy champ, multi-time finalist, and his impact was being felt on EG at day 1. Not just managing the best laning stats, but also smashing a lot of these 2v2 matchups. That being said, am I worried about Evil Geniuses? No, it's a development space. They do have staff like Kelsey Moser to go ahead and whip them right back into shape, but I think given time, it'll be less booms internally and more booms on opposing teams for a spicy finish for Evil Geniuses.
Oh, I'm hearing maybe some disagreement across my desk here.
Got something to say, Josh?
My fellow big brain here.
I do. We got something to talk about a little bit.
Okay, what do we think?
Right.
Well, I mean, Evil Geniuses is obviously one of the most divisive teams. People have been putting them anywhere from 4th to absolute last in the entire split. And at this point, I'm more convinced that they're going to be ending up towards the bottom of the standings than somewhere towards the top. And a couple of reasons for that. One, you already talked about Ryoma, and as we start taking a look at this, you are showing clips from last season. I got ones from this one, where he comes in,
yeah,
and
this wasn't great.
This was not good. Ryoma has unfortunately been making a lot more mistakes than we are used to seeing from this player, especially considering some of the legacy that they have had. And it's not just the mid lane that has been struggling. We've also been seeing it happen up in the top lane, where it's not just that they are flubbing some small mistakes. It's kind of really tough for them to actually find a lot of these opportunities to go hard. And Eric, you were talking about how they looked a lot better when King showed up. Yes, but we also have to remember that this is the same team that went 10-20 in spring. Even though King hadn't showed up at that point, they were also the only Challengers team to be eliminated in the first 2 rounds of spring playoffs. And now while they do have King in, and King has been playing well, it doesn't look as though the team necessarily has built up the mental fortitude. And while we know King's a great guy, we also know that it's not the kind of environment where if things start to go wrong, it's going to get better. And so that's part of why I'm expecting, now that they're going to start going up against some tougher teams, they might struggle to bounce back.
Okay, I think that is respectable. Definitely, something where I am usually in your seat, Josh. So I got some thoughts as well. Yeah, I might as well, throw out what we've got as, of course, in chat. If you want to vote, I expect this guys to be up there, but we'll see. Anyway, thoughts from me. What do we have so far? Well, guess what, guys? I'm going to take the middle, all right? Goldilocks this, okay? I had EG, middle of the pack, okay? So that's the expectation. I still think that EG likely going to be middle of the pack. Now, there are some pros and cons so far that we have this season. For example, a pro. Yeah, we didn't have a great moment from Soul in that clip, but also we have had some good ones from him. One of the developing players of EG. This was a rather nice Bomba. But you can see the bot lane was dying here, so EG going for 2 plays at once. Maybe not great. We could have some improvements. Also, I'm going to be honest. I very much agree with your diagnosis here, Josh. Ryoma, I don't like stats for everything, but after week 1, I have high expectations for Ryoma. Fun fact, is going up against his old coach in Golden Glue today with Disguise, so I know is looking forward to this matchup as well, but I want to see Ryoma step up if we are going to have EG be that upper half team. And guys, I got to say, Goldilocks, I feel like it's appropriate. It's got to be King. You got the different hairstyles. And this guy, to me, has been playing really, really well so far this split. So if EG can come together around their true Goldilocks and King, I think things could just be A-okay for him, as we'll see if they can do that against Disguise today. Yeah, any thoughts?
It took me a while to recognize what that photo was.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's great. That might be original content that we have. Who knows?
You know what? It's a filling out phase for week number 1. You got the same thing in MMA. You got to fill it out for the first few rounds, and then afterwards, we'll get running. That's my tidbit right there. That's my thought.
That's true. Well, I'm going to be feeling things out in this seat. I'll actually hand things over to you for Game 1 as we have draft ready. As EGC versus Skies, Game 1 coming on up. Tesserex, Yoshi, take it away.
All right, and someone clip that for a little bit later as we head into the draft right now. Evil Geniuses Challengers versus Disguise. Talk about it later, Josh. We'll talk about it later. I'm surprised you didn't jump
when I'm
on that
older.
one.
All right, we'll look for it. But as we do start to get into this one, right, we do have both these teams. They are currently towards the top of the standings, both currently tied for second with a 4-2 record thus far. Now, technically, Evil Geniuses are ahead because they've gone 2-0 more times than Disguise has. But as we go into this one, I think it would be a disservice to say that Disguise doesn't come in as a favorite in this one, right? We have seen how these guys have played. They've had a tough strength of schedule so far, and this is going to be their 3rd Challengers team out of 3 in the first 2 weeks, right? Disguise is being put through the ringer right away, and a win here will absolutely cement them as one of the strongest teams we have.
Now, where do you think the plan of attack is going to come from Disguise if they are to get this win? I'm going to start looking at the top side. You were saying that Soul wasn't exactly performing to expectations, especially given that he's gone through basically the whole NA system. FakeOdd is a really, really tough opponent to that regard, Josh.
Yeah, and FakeOdd, I actually did an interview with him over the weekend, which will be coming out next week, where he says that he is convinced he is the #1 player in the entire league. Not in the entire league. In terms of anybody who is a top laner, who is in NA, who is not in LCS, he's convinced he's #1. And Soul has been a player where so far the only time we've seen success coming out from this player is when Shaden has been helping him out a lot during the laning phase, right? He's going top lane with the Nocturne, trying to put Soul in a position of strength. And this is a game where FakeOdd was the weak side king throughout all of spring. It was so hard to put this guy meaningfully behind.
And the same thing can't be said about Soul, who does play weak side quite a bit, but some teams have been able to punish that time and time again. First pick coming out, blue side, Evil Geniuses Challengers. They're going to go for the Aphelios on this first one. See what Disguise want to go with after. Marksman going to get locked in for King.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit, I don't want to say timid, but a little bit more of a cautious opening here from Evil Genius Challengers, right? Taking away some of the other major AD carries and snapping up the last one that is available. But of course, that leaves so many different things available for Disguise. They have so many different styles that they do like to play. And of course, giving Tomio and Zeyzal the combined engage power that they now have with the Viracon is going to make King's life very tough.
See right there, Evil Genius is going to take away that Ahri. They don't want that Vi-Ahri combo along with the Rakan to have to deal with, because that is so much pick potential that Disguise would be getting. Evil Genius is able to take that away. It's going to go into the hands of Ryoma.
And Ryoma has been good at this champion in the past, and now this is one of the places where I would really like to see Shaden pick up something like the Poppy or the Maokai, right? Well, the Maokai is not really something we've seen Shaden play a lot of throughout his career so far. The Poppy has been one of the things where he has had a lot of success in the past. It's something he can play as an early game jungler that is strong disengage, a strong tool to stop some of these engages coming in later on in the game. But instead, we forgot about the cat, Eric. It's the homie hopper, hops from homie to homie every single time, just gives them a whole bunch of buffs, and it is so difficult for Disguise to deal with. The fact that we are seeing this coming through now has actually been surprising to me, because Disguise had an opportunity to pick it up or deny it.
That being said, though, the Zeri was banned away, so we're not going full pain right now. It still will be Aphelios and Yuumi paired together.
True.
As for Disguise, they are going to take the Lovers Duo for both Meech and Zeyzal, so you do have a level of self-peel that's going to come out if Ryoma does go hard onto this backline.
Yeah, and I think that will be really good, right? This is a spot where, because DSG have so many opportunities to go forward, we are still looking at opportunities for Meech to play by themselves. They're not necessarily going to have a ton of heal to actually help them out. It really is going to be on Meech to succeed on their own.
So first phase of the draft down, Disguise. They are going to be looking for a lot of pick earlier, especially if Zeyzal can get out of lane, start syncing up with Tomio. It's going to be a big threat for Evil Geniuses to have to deal with, but Evil Geniuses do have some pick of their own. Now, Evil Geniuses is going to start to ban away that mid lane pool. They already had their first pick onto that Ahri. So all that's left for Disguise is going to be the solo lanes.
Yeah, and as we start looking at this, right, we saw that last week Fake God was able to play the Renekton and just kind of pop off in one of their games, and this is going to be another opportunity for DSG to look for something that can continue to dive, because it doesn't look as though there's going to be great peel tools for King at this point, as the Poppy has been taken off the board, the Wukong has been taken off the board, and EGC is really going to struggle to try and prevent all of the engage coming from DSG.
Wondering what Shaden's going to look to go for here, because a lot of the team fight has been taken away, and now we've seen Shaden do well when he does go into a more carry-oriented role. Again, Spring, he did go on that spree of the 5 double digits, but that was Graves, Kindred, and Viego that he was playing during that spree. So some pretty powerful carry champion picks that Shaden does have in the repertoire, but it's Disguise to pick, and they're going to go with the LeBlanc.
Yeah, and as they do come with this, we have been seeing some different versions of this. If you guys were watching the OQs earlier today, you got to see that LeBlanc has been starting to experiment a little bit more with the Static Shiv, right? The Static Shiv gives you so much more powerful early wave clear, and you're buying yourself an extra AP ratio in order to just blow people up later on in the game. It's a very similar to things like Twisted Fate buying the Lich Bane in the past. But as we see this one come through, this is a very heavy skill matchup that we're seeing here in the mid lane, and Young has proven themselves to have grown so much over their time in Spring when they were playing with Golden Guardians, that now this is going to be something where if they can challenge Ryoma, who has been one of the best laners, this will put DSG in a fantastic position.
Yeah, Young has had some standout performances last spring, as you had mentioned, Josh. Was a highlight of that Golden Guardian squad against Ryoma. It's a good time to keep showing off that growth, Evil Geniuses Challengers. So this is going to be here. We're going doubling up on tank. Shaden's going to be playing the Maokai this time. So we got the final iteration of what Evil Geniuses champion picks are going to look like, which is going to be a very, very strong front line, a good amount of engage, good amount of pick to try and catch out a lot of Disguise, but you're dealing with the same thing coming out of Disguise. Last pick coming in, Fake God will take that Renekton.
Yeah, and I have news for you here. It's not just that this Maokai is coming up for Shaden. This is the first time that he has ever played this champion in a competitive environment, and now as they are bringing it through, it is the perfect champion, even if it's outside of the way that he wants to play, because there are so many champions that are going to be trying to dive into this Maokai, and now suddenly the peel that we were not expecting to be there for Evil Geniuses is actually available to them. And so it's going to be on Young now and Tommy to try and find some more inventive angles to make King and Smoothie uncomfortable in these team fights.
I'm kind of curious. I think this might be the 7th champion we've seen, unique champion we've seen in a row. Yeah, this will be the 7th champion that Shaden will be playing. So every single game it's been a new take. Now, Shaden on the more team fight oriented roles, the more utility to provide for the team, we haven't seen it work out that much unless it's Poppy. So that's going to be my only concern right there. Can Shaden now play that role to integrate with the squad and get Ryoma and King to both shine out?
I think Shaden should be very capable of doing this, right? We have seen that Shaden has been very good at playing towards the team when he needs to, especially when it has been related to Ryoma in the past. It was how they won a lot of their games when Ryoma first was able to join the team back. But my concern that we do have about this top side of the map, though, is still present, right? Shaden was known for cooperating with Ryoma to go for these ganks in the mid lane and kind of left Soul out to dry. We have seen what Fake God has done on this champion and their ability to just take over games, and he's in a pretty decent matchup at this point. If he can play really aggressive and is not punished by Shaden, Fake God should find a fairly large advantage all by themselves.
And that's not an easy lane for Shaden to influence as well, so if Soul falls behind, it's going to look pretty damning over there into that top side. As we have our first match of the day on the Path to LCS stream now underway. Evil Geniuses Challengers versus Disguised. Disguised performing more towards the expectation, but Evil Geniuses, we got to check that temperature.
Yeah, and I'm going to be honest, I am pretty convinced that this is more likely to be a 2-0 for Disguise than any other result, right? You know, if Evil Geniuses get a 2-0, I think that in itself will be remarkable. But we are going to be looking, as we said, in particular towards the mid lane and the top lane for the early laning phase beasts, just because both of these can be super, super volatile based on how they erupt early.
Ooh, already an attack onto King coming out from Meech and Zazel. King falling to about 200 health. Exhaust was burnt, so was the ghost of Evil Genius's bot laners.
Yeah. And, I mean, that's 2 summoner spells for 1. We have already seen how aggressive this bottom side can be. And one of the big things about being aggressive against a Yuumi lane early on is the fact that you burn through their mana super, super quickly if you force them to use those heals to keep King relatively healthy. And while he has a Cole for a little bit of pseudo lifesteal, right, you get that 3 HP back every time you go for an auto attack, it's not going to help you out nearly as much as the potions would have. And so we will pay attention to whether or not King will have the sustain in this lane to keep themselves in fighting form.
And that's going to be significantly increased off the fact that this is Xayah Rakan. Xayah does have a lot of back-end damage that King will always have to be vigilant of, while Aphelios will take a little bit more time to scale and get to that promised land. I am looking at the jungle pathing right now. Tomio is going to be headed into that bottom direction. It does look like he wants to go for an invade on the Shaden.
Yeah, I mean, it is the Vi going into the Maokai, will get spotted out. And there are actually no camps down here for Tomio to try and take away. It was a full clear, and there's a fight.
Oh, Shaden looking to take this fight, but it is against a Vi. He's not going to win the 1v1. Just a little bit of harassment before he heads towards the turret.
I think most junglers there don't trade 60% of their HP to Tomio, but I think that tells a lot about how Shaden does like to play the game, right? But now, as both junglers will be going back into their own side of the jungle, they will both jungle privilege their way back up. They will just be A-okay. They will be healthy here. Unless
there's a croc in these swamps. And he's going to be spotting out where Shaden's going. Didn't actually get him with the scry, but now it's a very dangerous blue side for Shaden.
Yeah, I mean, just having the extra vision down there and DSG knowing that he is not on the blue buff does give them a pretty good idea about what he could be doing, right? He has already picked up the Scuttle Crab, and then as he goes back to show, they will know exactly what his path has been so far, and this will give Fake God a lot of freedom to just play up here in the top lane, right? He's got a sustain advantage. He knows that Shaden is nearby, and so there's not really a whole lot of threat as the wave starts to bounce back towards Fake God. And this is something that Fake God has been one of the best players in the Challengers League at, is just putting his wave in positions where he is not under a lot of threat.
You see Soul trying to out-trade with Fake God, but a little bit of a tricky proposition over there in the top side. For the time being, Tomio is going to go vertical on a lot of this jungling, taking the respawn camps of Shaden. Does have some priority over into the mid lane and bottom lane if he wants to play around those areas.
Yeah. And this is definitely really good for the side of DSG, right? Both of their solo lanes are doing A-okay. Fake God is building up a lead for themselves, and that lead will expand as this next wave crashes from Seoul. And so DSG have already set themselves up in a position where Shaden doesn't have nearly as many options during the laning phase. He won't necessarily be able to find a lot of ganks. That's part of why we see him beelining towards the bottom side of the map. And I have to say, Eric, one of the biggest things I would say about Shaden in Spring is still true. If his first couple of plays go wrong, they go very bad.
Oh, King in some trouble, has to burn his flash to get away. Meech and Zeyzal starting to win out in this 2v2. Now it's going to be a 3v2 as Shaden will try and alleviate the pressure, walking up over towards Zeyzal, but only making his presence felt.
Yeah. It's a lot of trades coming back and forth, and Shaden is still hanging around, but if they don't get a gank off relatively soon, it's just a lot of time that Maokai is not going to be doing anything. And it's not the end of the world, right, if Maokai doesn't farm, but it is still a position where it's more of a player read than a character read, right? If Shaden doesn't have a good early game, it's oftentimes been difficult for them to make plays later on, and this is a very different style. And putting yourself just naturally behind against DSG puts a lot of pressure on Evil Geniuses.
I agree with that full-heartedly. I feel like Evil Geniuses is very much a momentum-based team. I think we've kind of seen it in the environment of Evil Geniuses quite a bit, that if things don't start going well early, you can feel the entire mood just change for this roster. It's something that they've been needing to kind of work out of, like tilt is a thing that can best you before the enemy team does, and games aren't over in the first 10 minutes. You can still swing it back.
Yeah. And DSG will also be picking themselves up the first Dragon of the game. And again, I kind of want to point out a couple things. One, Fake God is just now going to be using their teleport to come back. There is a very small freeze, but it will break. So in about 30 to 40 seconds, Fake God will have the wave towards his own turret again. So he just has a small window where he is under some threat. The second thing I want to point out is Young is going to be going for the Static Shiv build. We already see the Lightning Carrot come through. I believe it's called Kerche's Shard, ultimately, but it does that little bit of extra damage when you actually
I like
throw
Lightning
it out.
Carrot.
Lightning Carrot, I mean, I think it is the new official name. But the big thing is once that Static Shiv gets completed, it solves a lot of the problems that LeBlanc as a character has, and that suddenly you have way clear with your auto attacks.
And if a LeBlanc does get free out of the mid lane, don't know where she's hiding. That Fog of War makes it dangerous. She can just distort at any given time. Now both of these junglers are going to meet up over by the red buff of Shaden. Shaden spots this out, waiting for the Vault Breaker. Will catch out Shaden, falls to about 300 health, will forfeit his red buff in the process.
Didn't have Smite either, no way to contest that at all, and so DSG, this is the second time we have seen Tomio and Young taking the initiative to try and interrupt anything that Shaden has been trying to do. And quietly, again, up in the top side, Fake God winning out this lane relatively heavily. I'm really looking forward to what will happen with the next potential fight when we start looking towards the Rift Herald, right? That does spawn during the next 15 seconds. And look who's moving up, it's Zeyzal. Look who's not moving up, it's Smoothie.
I don't think you really want to contest this for Evil Geniuses right now. There's not too much momentum on their side, and it's all going towards Young, who has been getting constant priority over there. Tomio, who's just been stalking around. As the Rift Herald spawns, Tomio and Zeyzal will sync up to start it off.
There is a potential opportunity for a dive, but it is onto Zaya with Cleanse, and Shaden looking for a potential cross-map play, but it's really, really tough to try and make...
Too.
Yeah, you can't fight for the Rift Herald against your Renekton unless your Renekton is already behind, and now potentially trying to catch Zeyzal in rotation, but I mean, Shaden just throwing out a little bit of vision, making sure his bottom lane is not susceptible to a gank, and Eric, this is where we got to start looking at the players as Fake God, again, doing a fantastic job. But in the mid lane, we haven't seen Shaden and Ryoma link up for the ganks that earned them so many wins in Spring.
Instead, it's Tomio who's basically been running both of these jungles to the point where it's going to force Soul into recall right now. Doesn't have his teleport, so he'll be missing a lot of this wave. And look at the CS differential. We're almost at 30 now, Josh.
Yeah, that's a lot for this matchup, right? It is supposed to be Renekton favorite, but you're supposed to have to fight for every little bit of CS. You're supposed to be trying to force sign off of all of these different opportunities. And I think it just speaks a lot to how good Fake God's Renekton has been over the years.
So burning the ultimate to make sure he's going to catch that wave. We will get a look at the CS difference right now. It's almost a K separating these top laners at the moment. Fake God just so wealthy, working towards that first purchase, as control of the top side of the map, pretty much control of the entire rift, is going to Disguise in the early.
Yeah. I also wonder if that ultimate up in the top side kind of sacrifices any opportunity for Evil Geniuses to play for the dragon that spawns here in another minute and a half. Because unless they find a kill, they're going to be coming at this with a deficit. Everybody on DSG will be having a little bit more money to spend, will be a little bit more powerful than their counterparts on Evil Geniuses. And going up against a Renekton during one of the biggest power spikes, they've hit level 9, they already have access to that ultimate, and have already maxed the Q as well. That's just a lot of damage in a character that is absurdly tanky at this point in the game. And now they're going to be trying to give even more money over to this top side of the map in order to try and take this turret.
Yeah. Here's the call from Disguised. If you attack now, you will have enough time to make it to that dragon in the bottom side while getting first turret. You might get first blood as well. Soul doesn't have an ultimate to escape. He does have his flash, but not enough health to get towards that wall. First blood goes to Fake God.
Oh, and they stop him from killing the Rift Herald as well. That means he's almost definitely getting the second crash off. They shouldn't get the turret, but as you called out, a beautiful timing. They go do this, they take Soul off the map, and that means that this team will be able to reconnoiter themselves for the dragon, but still looking for fights.
This is 4K right now, Josh.
There's
At 10 minutes in. That's insane coming out from Disguise. It is just brutalization coming out. I know a lot of that's coming out from the top side. Given how much of a gold gain Fake God just got, I want to see what this first purchase, what this first back, how much he's going to be able to acquire.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot. The Gore Drinker just entirely completed, and the dragon does spawn. You see that Soul on the opposite side of the map doesn't have the ultimate available. Yeah, 2 extra long swords. This is a huge lead for DSG, and you see that Fake God cheating towards the mid lane, doesn't actually have to be in top lane yet because of how far back the wave is. Gives them another opportunity to kind of hedge their bets and see what it is that Evil Geniuses will try and do when DSG does try and start the dragon.
All right, here comes DSG looking for an engage in the bottom lane. It'll be led by Zazel. Able to find 1 kill onto King, a double kill going over to Tomios. They'll splat the cat for Disguised.
It's just a cat, can't do jack, it just goes down again, and the gold lead continues to balloon. That's going to be more plays down in the bottom lane. That's going to be this dragon going over. And Eric, how are you feeling about your prediction now? Is this still a top team? Here comes a teleport. Here comes a double teleport.
Hey, it's week 2. We're still filling out, man. As Ryoma shows up in the bottom lane, we'll be able to get 1 kill out onto Zazel. Chasing down Meech. Soul won't land the ultimate, but Ryoma doesn't care. He's got another charge at Spirit Rush. Double kill to Tommy.
Double kill for Tommy, but it's still a 4,000 gold lead and 2 dragons, and 2 of the best individual dragons for Disguise to already pick up. And now, I mean, the question is placed. How can Ryoma be the one to largely solo carry this game? Because the rest of his map is starting to crumble.
Oh, Shaden caught out at his own Raptor camp. Young with the distort over the wall will receive the first kill of the game into their pocket. It's going to feel good right now because you were talking about that, what do you call it, the carrot?
Lightning carrot.
Electric carrot, lightning carrot. We might see that completed. Yep, there it goes.
There it is. Static Shiv already coming through, and that gives so much extra opportunity for Young to move around. And as we said, it's also an extra AP ratio that they are buying for themselves. We'll take another look at this play. Which play is this? Oh, there's a teleport coming through. Yeah, as they both come down. This is the best thing that we've seen coming out from Evil Geniuses so far this game. They're entirely catching Zazel by surprise, and Meech doesn't have a whole lot of tools left. I actually really like the fact that Meech chooses to save the flash here, knowing there's not really an escape route, because there's no real opportunity for Tommy to come help.
I mean, sure, you can flash, but Spirit Rush is basically 3 flashes, and Ryoma has another summoner spell to continue that chase, so Meech taking a smart move there. We'll give something back to Evil Geniuses, but again, as you were saying, Josh, it puts so much onto Ryoma's shoulders to perform, to get the squad ahead. The ultimate will come out of Shaden. Tomio looking to thwart that gank. Ryoma has to deal with 2 fronts, though. Shaden's already down. 2v1, but Ryoma is under the turret. Uses the rest of Spirit Rush to make some distance.
Yeah, and are they even done? Zazel looking for another opportunity. Does not find it, but still, I mean, even with some fancy feet coming out from Ryoma to dodge both those distortions coming out from Young, it still is a kill going over to Disguise. They take control of the mid lane. They take control of the bottom lane. As we take another look at this fight, I mean, it's just Tomio coming through. He's 2 levels up already on Shaden at this point. Knocks him back, makes sure that there's no opportunity to try and go for anybody else. But as Shaden goes back in, that just gives Tomio another opportunity to go forward to get that little bit of extra damage down and the extra auto attacks. If Shaden backs off, he probably lives.
14 minutes in, and now it's a 6K lead in favor of Disguise. They have accelerated this game to holy high hell, and they're not stopping anytime soon. The Rift Herald is available, so they'll take control of this blue side jungle of EGC.
There's not a whole lot that Evil Geniuses can do about it. And now we got to start looking at... I don't like talking about itemization a ton, but this is definitely a spot where we have to look at what Ryoma is going to be building this game, because they're the one who needs to do the damage, and one of Ahri's biggest spikes, again, comes around this time when you have 2 items completed and people haven't started building up a ton of resistances yet. This is when Ahri can really make or break their game. As a Fiendish Codex comes out and going up against the LeBlanc, you typically expect this item to oftentimes turn into a Banshee's Veil, which I think would probably put Ryoma in a position where they kind of lose by default, right? At that point, you just do not have enough damage at all on your team, and you are deciding that we are waiting for 20 more minutes for King to have 3 completed items before I have an opportunity to fight again.
And to make things worse for Ryoma, I mean, your front line is basically paper tanks at the moment. Soul did complete that Sunfire Cape. Shaden still looking for that first item to reach completion, and now having a massive deficit against Tomio. At the same time that the rest of the lanes of Disguise are doing so well, they will just shred through that Maokai. As it is right now, Shaden is mostly just a kit to try and set up Ryoma.
And we'll see how well they can actually do that. I do want to spend a little bit of time talking about their counterpart on the side of DSG, Tomio, who is currently 3-0-2, but set up for a fight, just a bit of vision trading. Tomio has been a player that has long been lauded in the Challengers League space just because of how strong some of their mechanics are and how well they play things like Champions Queue and Solo Queue. But one of the criticisms we've often had of this player is they aren't willing to make a lot of plays on their own, but we are seeing that whether they are making the decision or not, they have been in really good places to make Shaden uncomfortable throughout the course of this game, taking him down a couple times in their own jungle, trying to take away as many camps as they can, and ultimately it doesn't matter who's making the decision because it means that DSG has such a strong jungler to play around.
This entire top side of the map is doing fantastic. Ryoma taking a little bit of poke damage coming out from Young, but even to that regard, look at the bottom side of the map. Disguise is doing well down there. Both Meech and Zazel are having great performances. There was questions if Meech would perform at the same level now that he has a different support, now that he's no longer with Breezy. You know, Mad Magical's very, very high on the Breezy train, but I'm very high on the Zazel Beard, and having Meech alongside him, they're out CSing King, we're good.
Yeah, on the Zazel Beard all the time. That's what I like to hear. But we are definitely in a position where, I mean, they've just been doing so much work, right? Going from Breezy to Zazel is not like you're suddenly in a position where you don't have a strong laning support alongside you. Zazel's been doing a good job with that and has been moving around the map. And speaking of, going up top lane, trying to find another kill on Soul.
Well, Soul in some trouble, gets knocked up, doesn't have a way to really escape here unless he burns the flash, but it gets met by Fake God, who stops the onslaught, and now Soul has nowhere else to go, just waiting for that teleport to come through. Shaden will join in, so will Ryoma. A lot of damage going on to Zazel. Zazel has to retreat. Teleport gonna be matched by Young, gets the chains onto Shaden. Ryoma still popping off here, and so is Meech, who has been unchecked thus far. King now joining the fight. Shaden will go down to Meech, and Disguise will not let up. Tomio now coming out from the flank. He wants to find King, commit some regicide. Vault Breaker goes through. Cease and desist onto Ryoma. Stop the Ahri from scaling up. Disguised will take him down.
Great stuff. Tomio coming in at the back end to try and find a little bit more. At the same time, Fake God teleports in the mid lane, picks up another turret. Disguise taking the maximum every single time they have an opportunity to do so. And it feels like this game is so much later. I know yesterday we were impressed with the way that Team Liquid LCS had a 10k gold lead at 13 minutes. This is still a 9k at, I believe it's 18 minutes. An absolutely incredible domination performance from them already. And the thing, as you take a look at this, look at where Tomio and Young are by the time this fight actually starts out, right? Tomio finishes up the dragon and then has time to walk from where he currently is all the way over because there's just not enough damage coming out from the side of Evil Geniuses at this point. King is not there able to do damage, and Ryoma, well, you know, they are the only member on the team with kills. It's not as though they have the damage to try and take down Fake God. And ultimately this, that's I think the third time this game where we've seen Shaden just going for fights where they don't need to, just getting caught by the Blade Caller, really just taking extra death and putting Evil Geniuses in a worse position.
And that's a tricky thing about going against these players. You know, it was Fake God and Zazel who started it out. And those are two of the most experienced players that we really have in the league. Fake God, you know, it was Dignitas back in 2020, I believe it was, as well as Zazel. We well know him being over on the Cloud9 roster. Yeah. But having that stage time, having that stage presence, they're used to the high pressure, and they execute well on it.
Yeah, we also got to see like Fake God having a fantastic performance throughout most of spring as one of the weak side kings, and I mean, Tomio gets a little bit caught, but he's gonna, no way.
Oh, here we go, Ryoma. Trying to get the better of this exchange, does have Shaden to bring some backup. King there also, the charm able to land onto King. King still bringing that damage. Now Young over the wall, Soul looking to just pass by, gives a good hello to the team before trying to shoo away that croc from the flank. And Evil Geniuses will not lose out on anyone, but they don't gain a thing.
That was, if they were not 10k ahead, that would have been the most illegal play I've ever seen, right? Tomio just goes on in like, I don't know if we can do this, but I have a lot of money, and all right, burn stopwatch, we're all good, but oh my gosh. Able to get away with it, and now they're going to get away with the Baron as well. 10,000 gold lead, 3 dragons, the Baron ready to go. This is the disguise I think we were all promised, right? You had 3 defending champions, and Fake God, Tomio, and Zazel coming through from their time on Cloud9 Challengers, and Young and Meech. I mean, it's worth noting that Young had an opportunity to play for Golden Guardians as their 6th man for the roster, but chose instead to come down and play with the Disguise roster because it's been a bet on themselves, right? A lot of these players are coming through. Fake God said the same thing in the interview, that this feels like they are betting on themselves. This is their opportunity to look really good at this level and try and find their opportunity back into the LCS.
Yeah, I've always been very, very impressed by a lot of the younger players that have been picked up by Disguises with Meech and Young. Now, you were just talking about Young just now, but even last season, back on that Golden Guardians roster, I remember it was the playoffs. I've always been thoroughly impressed by some of the mages that this guy can play. The Silas was one that popped out to me back in the AoE matchup, where he went like 14.0 on the KDA. He can carry, he can be an absolute beast for the team, and in this stacked roster, it does feel like he has a very, very settled place to really expand and continue that growth.
Yeah, and Young is a player who really felt revitalized during his time in the LCS, and when he came back down, he was saying like, yeah, now that I am here, I don't have anything to fear, right? I played against the LCS, like those guys were good, but I was able to hang with them, and now is the opportunity to kind of bust up on a lot of the other players, and Ryoma has been, like we said, one of the better performing mid laners so far, but I think we're seeing a bit more of the rough start coming out from Evil Geniuses. As we were saying, as a momentum-based team, I would be very shocked. I would straight give you $20 from this position if they won the game.
Cubby's not here to say done and dusted, so I'm not going to take that bet this time, Josh. But Evil Geniuses...
I'm just going to give it.
Just gonna give it. Okay.
Yeah, it's 100 to 0. You know?
Let's go, EG. Come on, make it happen. Need that $20.
Need that 20. Yeah.
And right now, EG need a breath of air, Josh. They are being strangled. Nexus towers under attack. One almost falling in the mid lane.
Yeah. And they're just going to be able to walk in, right? They're just putting pressure on all 3 lanes. And look at that. Tomio on the backside is going to go for this Ocean Soul. Will grab it. And the thing that makes this super, super difficult is how hard Evil Geniuses' opportunities to go for some of these engages are going to be.
And then Spirit Rush going to be used. Shaden popping the ultimate, but it does time out before it even gets close to Young. Young did have to burn his flash in that. Not the biggest loss given it's LeBlanc. Dragon Soul now going to be picked up by Disguised. As inhibitor towers are falling all across the map, there's only one that remains in the top side.
Yeah, and as teleport comes through, Young a little bit far forward.
Here comes the teleport, waiting for the decimating smash, but it's Young who shows up and slips away from it with the distortion. Gets the ethereal chains onto Soul, trying to defend these inhibitors, it's a little bit too hard when Disguised are spreading your team thin. Just a couple more autos will take down this bottom lane one. Each going for the harassment first.
Oh.
See first inhibitor down. Final inhibitor tower going down. King gonna go golden to try and buy some time to get away from Young, but here comes Fakon, and here comes the rest of Disguised to style on Evil Geniuses and make this game look easy. It's 24 minutes in, and they have a 15K lead. 3 defending champions, and they will be hurt, Josh, as they look to close this out.
Absolute domination coming out from the side of Disguise. They are going to be taking this game 1 in kind of the fashion I think a lot of people were expecting. This has been a top team. Evil Geniuses look to be going right on back to some of their struggles, and it asks a lot of questions. Can Evil Geniuses play if Shaden doesn't find himself on something a little bit more comfortable? Because we saw that the answer in this game at least was a resounding no.
Josh, in that second phase of the draft, they banned specifically towards Shaden. They took away picks like that Poppy. And then when Shaden was put on the Maokai, something we've never really seen him on, Disguise just ran the map absolutely. Every lane was pretty much into their favor. Ryoma was the only one who could give life to Evil Geniuses, and it wasn't enough. Disguised, what a performance.
I do want to pull up the stats from this one real quick, because I want to point out the damage numbers coming out from some of the players. King only outdamaged Rakan in this game, and I think that speaks a lot to the fact that it didn't feel as though Evil Geniuses came into this game with a plan. We said that once Ryoma got those kills and went for a more defensive build, the pressure was going to be put on King, but he never got to a position where they were able to take off. And I don't think that's a discredit to King, because I feel like he played fine. The game just got out of hand way too quickly.
That's also a brutal lane. It's Xayah Rakan into Aphelios Yuumi. It takes a bit of time there, but pretty good win coming out from Disguised, and a very convincing win at that regard. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, we'll have the halftime rally cry. The rally cry halftime show. I said it backwards that time with Cubby, so stay tuned. Not going to want to miss it.